Welcome back. It's been more than 2 years since the pandemic began, but earlier this week, North Korea reported its first ever case of COVID. But since April, over 524,000 cases of fever and over 21 deaths have been recorded. But whether these deaths and cases were linked to COVID remains a mystery due to the country's limited tested capacity. North Korea is not known to have imported any COVID vaccines either, which means that its population is virtually without any protection against the pandemic. CNN's Blake Essig is now joining us for more from Tokyo. Blake, how grave is the crisis as the infections hit a record high in North Korea? Are people in need of hospitalization? Is there any information available?
Well, Maha, the COVID crisis in North Korea is extremely serious. According to state media KCNA, just yesterday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un declared a major national emergency, ordered all cities nationwide to lock down, and said reversing the immediate public health crisis is the North's most important challenge. But the short answer to your question is we really have no idea how bad the COVID outbreak is in North Korea and likely never will. The reality is North Korea is an isolated nation under normal circumstances and is now more isolated than ever before after completely closing its borders to the outside world when the pandemic began more than 2 years ago to prevent exactly what seems to be happening right now. While the North is now reporting positive cases, it's unclear exactly how widespread the outbreak is. The reason for that uncertainty is because of the level of testing. It's extremely low. Now, according to the World Health Organization, since the pandemic began through the end of March this year, only 64,000 people had tested out of a population of more than 25 million. And to make matters worse, North Korea lacks significant healthcare infrastructure and is unlikely able to treat large number of patients. In fact, a reporter in Pyongyang for Chinese state media, CGTN, is reporting that medical and epidemic prevention facilities are already in short supply. And there's also the fact that almost none of the country's 25 million people have been vaccinated, and North Korea hasn't secured any vaccines through organizations like COVAX. Now, given those factors, Maha, I think the fear of an impending and deadly crisis in North Korea is very much justified.
Blake, the first case officially was announced only a couple of days ago. Do the number of infections suggest that the spread had been there for some time, but the detection was not timely?
Maha, it was only actually yesterday that North Korea identified or admitted its first ever case of COVID-19. And now North Korean state media, KCNA, today reported 18,000 new fever cases along with the country's first COVID-related death. Now, according to KCNA, they published a report just this morning. The spread started in late April and has since resulted in more than 350,000 people developing fevers. Now, KCNA says more than half of those people have since recovered, while about 187,000 are currently being isolated. Now, since the pandemic began, as I had mentioned before, North Korea completely closed itself off to the outside world to prevent an outbreak. And now, as the infection seems to be spreading, the country's Politburo has criticized the anti-epidemic sector for being careless, irresponsible, and incompetent, and perhaps to distract North Korea's domestic audience from the serious health crisis unfolding. Just yesterday evening, South Korea and Japan reported that North Korea had fired 3 short-range ballistic missiles into the water off the coast of the Korean peninsula. This was the North's 15th weapons test so far this year. Maha?
Like, certainly a very serious situation that is emanating in North Korea. Many thanks for joining us with all those details. Let's turn our attention now to Europe. Russia's war in Ukraine is pushing 2 more European nations into the folds of the NATO. In a joint statement by the Finnish Prime Minister and President, the country has already shown its intent to urgently apply for NATO membership. Sweden is expected to follow suit. Both countries believe that in the face of Russian aggression, they need to fortify their defenses. Sanjay Suri is now joining us with more from London. Sanjay, Finland has already announced its intention. How soon is Sweden expected to take a call? And how do they feel it will help them at this juncture when Russia is on record that it has a problem with NATO expansion?
Well, the Russian threat has been significant and has to be taken seriously. Russia has warned of serious consequences if they were to join. As of today, Russia has cut off electricity supply to Finland. That's about 10% of the supply. Finland says it will make up from elsewhere, principally from Sweden. This is the first Russian move, but it may not be the last. Of course, as you say, Finland is going ahead, and they say they will go ahead without delay. That is being considered this weekend at a NATO Foreign Ministers Conference underway in Berlin. That is principally about Ukraine, but of course Finland and Sweden have been represented and they are looking to join. The one new hurdle that seems to have come up in that direction, and this is a situation in a great deal of flux and a great deal of tense flux, is that Turkey has indicated that it may not support their membership. President Erdogan has said that he is not of a favorable opinion to Finland and NATO joining. And of course, all the 30 NATO members have veto power. So there is a division emerging even within NATO on that membership. But the whole position in Europe now, particularly in the states bordering Russia, is becoming more and more tense by the day.
All right, Sanjay, many thanks for joining us with all those details. Well, let's take a look now at some of the other stories that we've been tracking.
One of Putin's critics, a member of the punk music group Pussy Riot, says she escaped from Russia dressed as a food delivery worker. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has won the Philippines presidential elections. His father's dictatorship ended 40 years ago in a mass uprising. He has pledged to be a leader for all Filipinos, and United States President Joe Biden called to congratulate him, while China's President Xi Jinping did the same. The UAE's President Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan died on Friday at the age of 73. He took over as the UAE's second president in 2004, and mourning will go on for 40 days in the UAE. India's Vice President Venkaiah Naidu is traveling to the UAE to pay his respects. Tesla CEO Elon Musk has announced that his $44 billion deal to buy Twitter is temporarily on hold, but that he's still committed to acquiring the social media platform. The pause is pending a small investigation into whether spam and fake accounts represent less than 5% of Twitter's users.
Well, that's it then for today. See you again next week. Bye-bye.